It's 6:19 p.m. in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza, and this is the courtyard of the European hospital. Security camera footage overlooks a wide paved area where ambulances are parked. A woman walks with a young boy, then pauses to speak with another. In the distance is the hospital's emergency entrance. Men rest on plastic chairs along the curbside. Others walk by. It seems calm. It's another day at one of the last functioning hospitals in Gaza. There's no audio on the CCTV footage, but in this moment there are no visible signs of what's about to happen. Moments later, something changes. People look up. Some cover their ears, others start to run. Israeli airstrikes target the hospital. A fireball engulfs the courtyard. The force of the blast sends a man's body flying towards the camera. Then everything fades into a dense cloud of dust and debris. And this is what the blast leaves behind. A man who had been sitting on a plastic chair moments earlier scrambles to his feet and stumbles through the wreckage to escape. A fire continues to burn. The ground then buckles, and a section of the courtyard collapses inward, and a large crater begins to form where the strike hit. Men, women, and children flee the scene, desperately trying to find safety. Dr. Tom Potokar, a British surgeon, was inside the hospital when it was hit.
Absolutely massive strike on EGH hospital. This is right in front of the emergency room. People lying on the ground.
He's been to Gaza 16 times to treat patients as a consultant plastic surgeon. He filmed this on his phone just moments after the blast.
This is the corridor going down to the main theatres. I've got to find.
I then ran back through the through the emergency department and down the main corridor. There was quite a lot of damage to the corridor. You could smell the kind of acrid, bitter sort of smoke. I rushed out of the room, down the stairs and out into this courtyard. There was black smoke and fumes rising up from directly in front of the entrance. Immediately after the explosion, there was just a huge amount of screaming and shouting.
At least 28 people were killed and dozens were injured, according to Gaza's Hamas-run civil defense agency. The Israeli army said they were targeting a Hamas command and control center beneath the hospital. It didn't provide evidence of this to BBC Verify when requested. A number of patients had been waiting to be evacuated out of Gaza for treatment. A poster invited journalists to cover the event at the hospital. One freelance journalist working for the BBC was filming interviews inside the hospital grounds at the time of the attack. The journalist was injured. We're not naming him for his own safety. The World Health Organization staff were also at the hospital waiting to evacuate patients. It told BBC Verify that the Israeli military body, the Coordination and Liaison Administration for Gaza, was notified in advance about the evacuation. The Israeli body was told in advance about the staff involved, the expected arrival and departure times to and from the hospital, and the number of patients being transferred. One mother was describing her son's treatment as the strikes unfolded. The WHO says it received no communication about the attack from the Israeli body before the bombing began. Was there any indication that the hospital would be a target? Did you receive any evacuation orders? Did you have any prior warning?
No. I mean, I'm talking as a clinician, as a humanitarian worker, a surgeon working there. No, we had absolutely no warning whatsoever.
BBC Verify also found no evidence of an evacuation order issued for the European hospital complex between the 18th of March, when Israel restarted fighting after the ceasefire, and the 13th of May. Sir Geoffrey Nice is a British barrister and former prosecutor for the UN in The Hague of Slobodan Milosevic former president of Serbia.
There are many ways in which hospital facilities, patients, doctors and so on enjoy special protection. And one of the ways they enjoy extra protection is under international humanitarian law. Warnings have to be given. And so if no warning was given, it's even harder for Israel to assert that this was a legitimate attack on a hospital.
This was filmed on Salahuddin Road, about 500 metres from the hospital. The video captures multiple explosions, at least 13 in total. We can show you 11 of them here. Back at the courtyard, CCTV captures the moment 3 bombs land in a row. Details about the number of strikes in total vary. BBC Verify analysis identifies at least 13 damage sites at the hospital complex. That includes a large crater that nearly swallows a bus, which the World Health Organization said it planned to use for medical evacuations. 2 more destroyed a road leading to the hospital, and another in a green space between 2 hospital building wings. The Israeli military told BBC Verify that it was targeting a Hamas command and control centre beneath the European hospital and published aerial surveillance video. The footage highlighted a building marked as the European hospital, but it's incorrect. It's actually a school building nearby, 215 metres away. When asked about the discrepancy, the IDF confirmed to BBC Verify that the area marked was not the hospital itself. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that Israel had most likely killed Hamas commander Mohammed Sinwar without providing details. Local Israeli media had reported that he was the intended target of the attack on the European hospital at the time, but the Israeli army didn't confirm this. Multiple legal experts told BBC Verify that the nature of the Israeli strikes raised serious concerns about their legality.
Really, the question of whether this strike was lawful has 3 parts. So the first is whether there was a command and control centre being used by Hamas within this hospital. If there was, and if that can be shown by Israel to be true, the strike wasn't necessarily lawful. We then have to ask 2 further questions. First, we have to ask, did Israel carry out sufficient precautions to warn the civilians in the hospital of the impending attack so that they could flee? And the second question, even if they did carry out those precautions, was the expected harm to the civilian population proportionate to the military advantage that Israel expected to gain from this particular attack? And it's hard to imagine that an attack against a hospital within Gaza at the moment could ever be proportionate.
This visual evidence from the strike is significant. Numerous experts have told BBC Verify that it all points to one type of weapon: bunker buster bombs.
You can think of a bunker buster almost as being a needle in that it's a very long, very thin object. They're designed to enter the surface of the earth, to go somewhere between 6 and 30 meters underground. And after they've entered the earth is when an explosion happens to destroy something underneath.
And they said these bombs are used because of how precise they are for underground targets.
The blast suggests those impacts have been associated with a bunker buster or a penetrating munition because the blast wave is so contained.
Are you saying that what you're seeing on this video shows that there was a tunnel underneath the ground?
Strongly suggests that there's something underneath. Now, whether that's a tunnel or a bunker or a storage facility or even just a pipeline or some other void, doesn't necessarily mean it was any particular type of structure, but the way in which the earth collapses down there, the fact that there's fire propagating through from some source suggests that there's probably a void under there.
To me, this suggests that there was fairly high Israeli intelligence about what the structure underground looked like at these areas, but there might have been a lot of uncertainty about exactly where the intended target was.
The Israeli army told BBC Verify it used precise munitions, aerial surveillance and additional intelligence to reduce the risk of harm to both civilians and civilian infrastructure. We spoke to Dr. Daphne Richman-Barak, an expert on underground warfare who teaches at Reichman University in Israel.
The Hamas tunnel network is the most sophisticated and intricate tunnel system that has ever been encountered in the history of warfare. So just as it took a long time to create this military infrastructure underground, it will take a long time to undo it.
BBC Verify can't confirm what underground structures, if any, these bunker busters hit. But Sir Geoffrey Nice said, even if there were, it still may not be sufficient justification for the Israeli army and may constitute a war crime.
So is there any evidence that this hospital, these medical workers, let alone the patients in the hospital, had anything active to do with allowing there to be a Hamas facility under the ground? Now, if there is no such evidence, then the hospital retains its protected status, as do all the people working within it. International humanitarian law says the doubt has to be resolved in favour of the protection of the aid workers, the medical workers, and so on.
The assault didn't end that night. The next day, Dr. Potokar told us work was underway to repair roads so emergency vehicles could reach the hospital. BBC Verify confirmed at least one other strike hit the hospital grounds the following day, where a bulldozer was hit. The Israeli army told us it struck additional targets. The BBC didn't find any evidence of an evacuation order for the hospital that day.
The engineers had come in the morning and done a sort of full assessment of the damage and identified that there was quite a lot, not just of structural damage, but also to the water supply. There was no water running for most of the time, even in the intensive care unit. I think some of the power had been disrupted as well. And clearly a hospital that has no running water, cannot function as a hospital.
The UN says their office has documented at least 686 attacks impacting healthcare in the Gaza Strip since war erupted in October 2023, following the deadly Hamas-led attacks on Israel. And they say the healthcare system in Gaza has been decimated.
Tom, can you hear me? Or is it just your video that's gone?
He's now moved to the Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis.
I have colleagues that have been evacuated 8-10 times now from one place to another. The actual cities like here in Khan Yunis, it looks like one of the cities after the Second World War.
Israel resumed airstrikes in March following the collapse of a fragile ceasefire which lasted 2 months. It announced a new offensive in May amid the deadliest wave of strikes in Gaza in months. Leaders of the UK, Canada and France released a joint statement warning the Israeli government it must end its egregious actions and immediately allow humanitarian aid to enter Gaza. Israel launched a military campaign in Gaza in response to Hamas's cross-border attack on the 7th of October, in which about 1,200 people were killed and 251 were taken hostage. Since then, at least 53,000 people have been killed in Gaza, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. The figures don't distinguish between military and civilian deaths.
Amongst arguments that are being made effectively about Israel is that it has become increasingly confident, given America's backing, that it will never have to face an accountability process.
Do you have a message to the Israeli government?
Stop.